Mother's Day brunch was supposed to be different this time. I had this naive little hope that perhaps things would be smoother, kinder, a bit warmer. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe because I'd been so caught up in work, I hadn't had the bandwidth to dwell on it too much. Or maybe it was because just a few weeks earlier, I had helped my mom with her taxes and she'd actually said thank you. And it didn't sound forced or obligatory. It felt real, genuine. And then when I texted her last week to confirm our brunch plans, she replied with a smiley face. Not the emoji kind, but the old school colon in parenthesis. The way she used to text when I was in middle school before everything started unraveling. So yeah, I let myself hope a little. I picked out her favorite perfume, the one she always wore when I was little, and she still called me sweetheart in front of others. I stopped by a local florist to get fresh flowers, not the supermarket kind, and I poured my heart into a letter I wrote by hand. Not just a standard thanks for everything note. I told her I understood things hadn't always been easy, that I appreciated the sacrifices she made for me, and that I still loved her, even if it often felt like she didn't want me around anymore. It was honest, not desperate. I convinced myself that maybe this brunch could be a new beginning, a way to reconnect. She had me when she was barely out of high school. It was just the two of us for a long time. It was messy, but we were close. Then, when I was about 10, she met Jake, who is now her husband. He was nice in the beginning, quiet and practical. I thought I was gaining someone, a father figure maybe. But what I didn't realize was that I was about to become invisible. They had a baby, my half-brother Zach, and suddenly I was no longer her son. I became a living reminder of her past. Jake seemed to prefer a clean slate, a picture-perfect nuclear family. You could feel it in how he always referred to Zach as our boy, but never once spoke of me as his stepson unless someone specifically asked. Yet I still held on to hope, because sometimes the need to be wanted can make you overlook all the signs telling you otherwise. So when I arrived that morning with gifts in hand, I felt good. Nervous, yes, but also proud. Like I was showing up as an adult, someone worthy of being at that table. The house looked beautiful. She always went all out for events. Mimosas, cloth napkins, actual place cards, a real Pinterest vibe. As I stepped inside, she glanced up from the table. "Oh, you made it," she said. And for a fleeting moment, I thought she really meant it. Maybe this was the breakthrough. I'd finally done something right. I handed her the flowers and the perfume. She looked at the bottle like it was something she didn't recall asking for. "Oh, you remembered this one," she noted. It wasn't warm, just a statement. I tried not to let it get to me. I smiled, saying, "Yeah, they only had one left." She nodded, already turning back to the table. My half-brother Zach was in the middle of a story about his dorm life and making jokes about his econ professor. Everyone laughed. I sat down. There was a folded napkin at my place setting, but no card. No one had saved me a mimosa, but that was okay. I poured myself some juice, trying to keep it together. Jake asked about my work, but before I could finish answering, he turned away. My mom was busy adjusting the centerpiece. Zach handed me the salt without even looking at me. This wasn't new, but today it felt heavier. Maybe because I'd actually tried this time. Maybe because the letter was still in my jacket pocket, and I was debating when to give it to her. I'd even sealed it in a red envelope and used the good pen. "Anyone want more coffee?" I offered. My mom didn't hear me, or maybe she pretended not to. Halfway through brunch, Zach looked at me with a smirk. "So do you celebrate Mother's Day from a distance now, or is this your charity visit?" Jake laughed. My mom didn't say anything. She just sipped her drink. I smiled, pretending it didn't sting, and replied, "Well, I didn't bring a coupon, but I did bring a gift." Zach grinned. "Cool. Did you Venmo it to her?" I remember the day like it was yesterday. We were all gathered around the table, the usual family brunch that was supposed to feel warm and comforting, but always left me with a sense of unease. It was one of those moments where you pretend everything's fine, but inside, something's gnawing at you. I had this red envelope in my pocket, a letter I had carefully written. It was meant to be a gesture of gratitude. I had decided this year would be different. This time I put my feelings down on paper. When I handed it to her, placing it right next to her plate, it stood out so starkly against the white tablecloth like a warning sign. She looked at it with a strange expression, almost as if I had delivered bad news. My brother made a joke, something about it being a love letter, which only added to the awkwardness. I just smiled, trying to brush it off, saying it was simply a thank you. The conversation shifted quickly. Someone asked for the butter, and life moved on as if nothing significant had happened. After we finished eating, I helped clear the table. It was the least I could do, considering the occasion. While carrying a stack of plates to the kitchen, I noticed the trash bags were already out in the garage. It seemed strange because we had just finished eating, but I shrugged it off, thinking maybe she was just trying to keep things tidy. She always liked a clean house. I decided to take the napkins out myself. The garage door was partially open, letting in just enough sunlight to see everything clearly. That's when I saw it. Leaning against a black trash bag was my gift. The perfume was still in its box, the flowers shoved carelessly, and the red envelope, my envelope, was still sealed. It was all there, discarded like it meant nothing. I stood there, frozen, staring at the scene. It didn't make me angry at first. It was more like a wave of heat creeping up my neck, settling heavily behind my eyes. Not enough to make me cry, but enough to make the world around me blur. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out and tell me it was all a mistake or a prank, but there was nothing, just silence and trash. I crouched down, reached in, and took everything back. The perfume, the flowers, the letter, they were mine again, and I held them close as if they were evidence of some crime. Standing in that dim garage, I wasn't sure why I did it. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was pride. Perhaps I just couldn't stand the thought of my feelings being buried under coffee grounds and eggshells. I went back to my car, clutching the bag like it was something precious. I sat there for a moment, engine off, with the letter beside me on the passenger seat. A part of me thought about how foolish it was to write those words. Thank you for the years you gave me. I know it wasn't easy, but you did your best. I'm proud of the woman you became. I stared at the envelope, then decided to drive home. I didn't say goodbye, didn't text, didn't bring up what I saw. I didn't even have the strength to slam the door. Just left quietly. That night, I put the letter on my kitchen counter next to the perfume and the wilting flowers. I stared at them, hoping they'd somehow explain why I kept trying, why I still cared, why I didn't see any of this coming. Sleep didn't come easy that night, but before the sun rose, I made a decision. By the next morning, she was calling nonstop. It's funny how I used to believe that change happened slowly, like erosion, so gradual that you wouldn't notice until everything was gone. But now, looking back, I realize it happened much faster than I allowed myself to admit. I was 10 when she met Jake. At first, he came for dinner a couple of times, and then suddenly he was there every night. I remember waking up one morning to find his car in the driveway, his shoes in the hallway, and my mom wearing more makeup than usual. She smiled at him in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. I realized then that things were different. The baby came soon after. I was still 10, but old enough to do the math later, though I doubt she thought I would. It felt like they formed a new family in the blink of an eye. New routines, new rules, a nursery where the home office used to be, a second fridge in the garage stocked with formula and organic baby food, and a chore chart that didn't have my name on it anymore. They were busy, of course. Newborns are hard, I told myself. It made sense when they forgot to ask about my spelling test or missed my school concert or left me waiting outside karate practice in the rain. They were just tired. It was just a phase. I waited years for that phase to end, but it didn't. The baby grew, and they adored him. His first steps, his first words, each milestone celebrated with tears and laughter. I brought home an award from school, and Mom simply said, "That's great. Can you watch your brother while I take a nap?" It wasn't that she stopped loving me, I told myself. It was just that there was less of her to go around. It wasn't like she suddenly stopped loving me. It was more that she started loving someone else more openly, more loudly. And over time, the silence became unbearable. By the time I left for college, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every wall was covered with pictures of them, smiling at parks, wearing matching holiday pajamas, my brother sitting on Santa's lap. I wasn't in any of them, not even my high school graduation photo. It was as if I'd been erased. I remember walking past a framed canvas by the stairs that said, "Family is everything," thinking, yeah, just not this one. But I kept trying, and that's the part that still embarrasses me. I kept showing up for holidays, kept buying birthday gifts. I helped with bills when I knew money was tight, even after finding out they'd taken a vacation and just forgot to mention it. I used my contacts to help Jake get a job in a client-facing role he wasn't really qualified for. He nailed the interview. Charisma can get you far when no one's fact-checking you. They never told anyone I helped. That was fine. I convinced myself I wasn't doing it for the credit. I was doing it to stay connected, to feel like I was still part of them. Even after getting my own apartment and a decent job, I still visited, still called, still sent my mom texts on random Wednesdays just to say, "Hope your day is going okay." Sometimes she replied. Sometimes she left me on read for days. But when she did respond, it felt like oxygen. One time, after I helped sort out some insurance paperwork, she texted, "You always come through, thank you." I reread that message for weeks. I'm not proud of that. But if you've ever felt invisible to someone you used to be the center of, you understand. That's why this year, the brunch hurt so much. I'd let myself believe maybe we'd turned a corner. She sent a smiley face in her text confirming the invite. She thanked me after I helped her with her taxes. She didn't ask for money that month. I thought maybe things were leveling out. Maybe she was softening again, and for a moment, standing on her porch with flowers, a letter, and the perfume she used to wear when I was a kid, I felt like a son again. Then she laughed at my brother's joke about me being half family, and didn't say a word when Jake interrupted me mid-sentence, changing the subject to something about stock options. She barely glanced at the envelope when I handed it to her. The one I'd stayed up late writing, where I told her I loved her even when it hurt, even when it felt one-sided. Then she threw it away. I keep seeing it. The bag by the garage, the red envelope folded and bent, the perfume box unopened, the flowers half crushed under other trash. I pulled it all back out, not to give it again, not to make a point, just because I couldn't bear to leave it there. Those things weren't just gifts. They were mine. They were me. And if she didn't want them, then I was done giving. My mom sent a message that evening. "You left in a weird mood. I hope it wasn't something we did." It almost made me laugh, but it didn't because nothing about it was funny. Not the years I spent shrinking myself to make space for the version of her life she liked better. Not the countless little kindnesses I offered without thanks. Not the memory of her tucking me in at 7, saying, "You're my whole world," only to grow up and find out that world had borders I was never allowed to cross again. They didn't kick me out. They just made sure I always felt like I was visiting someone else's family. So yeah, I haven't called them back because for the first time, I'm not trying to be invited in. I'm trying to remember what it feels like to belong to myself. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of rage, not even heartbreak. It was something worse. Clarity. That dull, cold kind of clarity that settles in when you're done hoping. Like standing in a house you once thought you'd live in forever and finally realizing all the walls are hollow. Around 2 a.m., I walked into my kitchen and lined the 3 gifts up on the counter. The perfume, the flowers, the letter. They sat there, a reminder of everything I'd tried to give, everything I wanted to be. I realized I was holding on to memories of what used to be, not what was. And that was the hardest part, accepting that the version of family I'd held onto was gone, replaced by something I couldn't recognize. I remember sitting there, staring at the envelope that seemed to shrink in my hands, a relic from a past I no longer recognized as mine. It was crumpled, still sealed, and I knew exactly what it contained without needing to open it. I had no desire to relive the words inside. Instead, I turned to my laptop. I started with the practical things, the utilities. I logged into the accounts for gas, water, electricity, the ones I'd been quietly handling. I scheduled final payments for the month, removed my name from the accounts, and canceled the automatic drafts. Then I moved on to the tuition account. I had promised to help with my brother's next semester, but I canceled the transfer that was due on the 15th. The confirmation email made everything feel more permanent, more real. I opened a new email, addressed it to my mom, and the subject was simple. Mother's Day. I wrote that I had tucked an envelope of cash inside the letter I gave her, meant for Zach's tuition. I figured she'd know what to do with it, and I hoped it hadn't gotten lost. I hit send. I turned off my laptop, made a cup of tea that I didn't drink, and sat in the silence. Letting her sit with the uncertainty felt more satisfying than any argument. By 8 a.m., the text messages started arriving. Confusion, panic. What do you mean, cash? I didn't see any envelope inside. Are you serious? How much was in there? The calls came next, one after another. I watched the phone light up, voicemails stacking up like little reminders of her frantic state. I didn't respond. I let her panic, let her retrace her steps, let her wonder about how much she had tossed away, both literally and metaphorically. Of course, there was no cash, but she didn't know that. And now, every time she thought about that trash bag, she'd feel the loss, the possibility that she had discarded something invaluable. Around noon, Jake messaged me. He said I was being childish, that this was serious, and asked if I was lying. I almost replied with something snarky, but instead I put my phone on silent and moved on to the next step. I went through my contacts, found the names of 3 people I had introduced Jake to. Clients, vendors, an old friend who helped him land a side contract. I sent each of them a similar message, asking them not to associate my name with Jake Hatcher anymore. It was nothing dramatic, just a personal boundary. No gossip, no details, just enough to make them wonder what had happened. Enough to loosen a few threads in his professional world. I knew how it all worked. His job relied on being seen as trustworthy and connected. By the end of the week, the fallout had begun. A long-standing referral was lost. A contract paused. A client requested to deal with someone else. I didn't have to do much, just one email and a bit of distance, and the unraveling took care of itself. That night, my phone buzzed again. Did you find it? Please respond. I need to know. I think I saw the bag you're talking about, but it's gone now. Is this real? I stared at her name on the screen. I thought about saying something final, cutting, but I knew that would offer her a closure she didn't deserve. So I did nothing, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about making them feel the weight I've carried since I was a child, since I stopped being her whole world and became an inconvenience she couldn't wait to outgrow. It was about letting them scramble in the silence, letting them finally see what I've been trying to show for years. You can't erase someone and expect them to stay loyal. Yes, I lied about the envelope, but the pain, the abandonment, that was real. And for the first time, they couldn't ignore it. I remember that night like it was yesterday. Her voice trembled just enough to betray the mask of calm she tried so hard to maintain. It wasn't the kind of shaking that comes with tears, but more like the desperation that seeps out when someone realizes they're losing control. She kept saying, "Please call me, please." It was as if those words could somehow rewind time, erase what was done and what was left unsaid. But I didn't call. I just couldn't. The weight of everything unsaid hung between us like a wall I couldn't climb, I remember thinking how she never said, "I love you," or even, "I'm truly sorry." It was more like someone in a panic, someone who realizes they've lost something precious but can't remember where they left it. I stayed silent, not out of spite, but because I was too drained to give her anything more. The next morning, my aunt sent me a text. It was short, just one line, but it was like she saw right through me. My mom had called her, apparently in tears, painting me as this cruel, unyielding daughter who was making life difficult. My aunt simply wrote, "If I were you, I wouldn't answer either." I smiled at that, for the first time feeling like someone finally understood the imbalance of our relationship, how much I had poured into it, and how little I had received in return. I had accepted being a shadow of myself for so long, until it became unbearable. That weekend, I gathered up all the gifts she had given me, boxed them up, and tucked them away in my closet. Not because I wanted to keep them, but because I wasn't ready to let them go either. They were no longer reminders of her, but of who I was back then, the version of me who kept trying, kept hoping. But not anymore. I was done trying. By Monday, the tone of her messages had shifted. No longer was she asking if I was okay. Instead, she was demanding answers. Her texts went from, "I'm sorry you're upset," to, "You need to stop this now." It was as if my silence was a rebellion she couldn't comprehend. Jake, my brother, reached out too, but in a more formal way, through email. It was almost businesslike, as if we were negotiating some sort of contract. He said my decision to step back was affecting his work, and that he hoped I'd reconsider for the sake of the family's stability. But all I saw was the subtext. My silence was costing him money. Again, I didn't respond. Then Zach, my other brother, sent me a voice memo. It started with acknowledging our imperfections and ended with accusing me of ruining our mom's life over some trash. That nearly made me laugh, the irony of it all. To them, I was just clutter, something to be boxed up and stored away, so I wouldn't disrupt their perfect facade. Now that I was gone, their world was off kilter, and they didn't know how to fix it. Still, I said nothing. I didn't post about it on social media, didn't send a final message outlining all the ways they had hurt me. I just stopped playing the role they had assigned to me, and it drove them insane. By the end of the week, my mom showed up at my office, unannounced, like a storm ready to unleash its fury. The receptionist buzzed me like it was an emergency. I went downstairs to find her standing there, as if she was on a mission. She didn't smile, didn't ask how I was. "Can we talk?" she said, already heading towards the door. Outside, she skipped the pleasantries and went straight to accusations. I had humiliated the family, she said, embarrassed my brother, and jeopardized Jake's job. Did I understand what that meant? I nodded, keeping my voice calm. I understood perfectly. She looked at me, her eyes hard as if trying to pierce through my resolve. "You're doing this out of spite over one party?" she asked. I tilted my head, considering her words. Is that what she really thought? We stood there, the tension between us palpable. She crossed her arms, a familiar gesture. "We raised you. We paid for your clothes, your food, your school," she said, as if listing receipts for services rendered. I nodded slowly, reminding her that I had given a down payment on my house, covered utility bills, and even offered to help with Zach's tuition. But sure, let's talk about that time she bought me sneakers in 5th grade. Something in her face shifted, her jaw clenched. "That was your choice," she said. "We never asked you to help." "No," I replied, "they never asked. They just expected it. Expected me to fill in the gaps, to be understanding when they forgot, to stay silent when they belittled me." She opened her mouth to protest, but I wasn't done. They expected me to keep giving, even after they had taken the last thing I had to offer. That seemed to land somewhere deep inside her. She blinked, and for a moment there was something in her eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe just discomfort. Then she tried one last time, telling me I was punishing the wrong person. But I knew better. Silence was the only way left for me to reclaim a piece of myself. I remember the moment like it was yesterday. Sitting there with my mom, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. She looked at me, her face a mix of frustration and disbelief. It was about my brother, Jake. He had managed to avoid accountability yet again, and she couldn't understand why I was upset. She said I was punishing him as if he hadn't brought this on himself. I forced a tired smile, one that probably looked more like a grimace. I asked her if she wanted to talk about the letter. Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I had found it in the trash bag next to the garage, not where a letter from your child should end up. I took it back, held it in my hands, feeling the weight of what it meant. Her face changed then. The sharpness in her eyes faded into something smaller, weaker. She admitted she didn't know. She thought maybe I had taken it with me and wasn't sure. That was the problem, wasn't it? She was never sure about me, never certain of my place in the family. I repeated her words back to her, not to be cruel, but because I needed her to hear the truth of it. I didn't yell, didn't raise my voice. I just let the words hang there between us, hoping they'd find their way into her understanding. I'm not dropping the act, I told her. I'm not cleaning up the mess they've made. And if Jake has to face the consequences of his actions, so be it. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. The look she gave me was one of shock, as if she was seeing me for the first time, the real me that had been hiding behind a facade of reliability and quiet compliance. When she accused me of punishing the family, it was like a knife twisting in an old wound. But I nodded, because maybe this family needed to stop treating me like an outsider who just happened to have a checkbook. I turned away, walked back inside, and didn't look back. It was time to start living for myself. A couple of days later, Zach, my cousin, posted some vague and dramatic story on social media. It was about people abandoning their families when things got tough. Some mutual acquaintances liked it, and one of my cousins even messaged me privately asking if it was about me. I replied that it probably was, and if it was, then good. Jake's professional life started to unravel soon after. The clients he had were leaving, partnerships were being reconsidered. One of the vendors I had introduced to him pulled their contract. A month later, he was asked to resign, and they called it restructuring. Everyone knew that wasn't true. Zach's tuition wasn't paid, and he had to defer his studies. I stayed silent, not out of cruelty, but because silence was the only thing they never learned to understand. A few weeks after everything went down at the office, I received a group call from my mom, Jake, and Zach. I didn't answer it. They left a voicemail instead. My mom's voice was syrupy and careful, as if she was trying to reset a game after flipping the board. Zach mumbled something that might have been an apology, but I didn't hear anything from Jake. My mom ended the message with a question, asking if I was disowning them. I listened to the message twice, once to hear their words and once to hear what they didn't say. No one apologized sincerely. No one admitted they were wrong. They just wanted me back in my role, back in the place I had been for years. But I was done with that. So I didn't respond. I blocked their number, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. 3 months later, life had started to turn around for me. I got a promotion, moved into a better apartment, and started hosting small dinners with people who genuinely wanted to hear what I had to say. It felt liberating, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Then, one night, I received a message from my mom. She said she saw I had moved and hoped I was doing well. She mentioned if I ever wanted to talk, she was there, but she didn't acknowledge what she had done or what she hadn't done. She didn't ask how I was really doing. It was just an attempt to see if the door was still open, but it wasn't. I made myself a cup of tea, sat on my balcony, and looked out at the city lights. There was no noise, no guilt, no performance, just quiet. In that silence, for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted, if maybe I should have just let it go, smiled through the pain, and picked a more convenient time to set boundaries. Maybe I should have chosen peace over silence. But then I remember that garage. I remember standing there, holding my unopened gifts, still damp from the trash bag. I remember the letter I had written, my hands shaking as I tried to be vulnerable with someone who didn't think twice before discarding it. And I realize I didn't burn a bridge. I just stopped carrying the weight of one they had torn down years ago. I'm not proud of the lie about the cash, but I'm not ashamed of it either. Because for once, they had to sit with uncertainty, with discomfort, with the possibility that what they threw away might have mattered more than they realized. So what do you think? Was I too harsh? Was it finally time someone said enough? Would you have done the same? Or walked away, quieter? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how people see it. And if you like stories like this, ones about family boundaries and quiet revenge, don't forget to hit that subscribe button